Thank you, Ned. What I want to talk about are some of the input assumptions. As you know, the output of our models are only as good as the input is, and so we spent a great deal of time working on collecting data, and as Ned pointed out, it was we didn't have a lot of data to work with, so we relied a great deal upon industry expertise to help us project likely scenarios. But I did want to relate to you some of our assumptions with regard to data collection, and at least the important ones. To start with, we determined that the most valuable piece of information that we could obtain is what they call an authority for expenditure, or an AFE. This is an industry accounting device that's used to determine or to project what it's going to cost to do a particular activity. And in this case, we're looking at drilling and completion of wells. That sort of information is broken down into a whole lot of different scenarios of things that are going to be done. And we looked at each one of those, and we tried to determine within each one of those which ones are likely to create work in Ohio, which ones are likely to be outsourced to companies from outside of Ohio. And we put all that meticulously into the model that Iryna has put together. But the authorities for expenditure make up the lion's share of the expenses or the costs in the upstream industry. And but we also looked at areas that were outside the authority for expenditure, and those included leasing of mineral rights. The leasing of mineral rights, primarily the money spent there is on bonuses and on royalties. And we looked at road construction, and this relates to at a site location, the equipment that's brought in is heavy, and they need to upgrade roads and bridges and culverts. And so we looked at that. And then finally, we looked at what is called the midstream part of the industry, which is the post-production area prior to the delivery of the hydrocarbons to an end user. And in this regard, we looked only at the natural gas side. We did not look at the oil side of post-production infrastructure. The reason is because the post-production infrastructure of natural gas is much more elaborate than it is for oil in the midstream end, because you have gathering lines, you have processing plants, and you have fractionation plants, and so on. As Ned mentioned, we did not model downstream. We left for another day, although Doug Southgate did look at this in some detail, but we did not attempt to model it. And we also did not look at what the effects of shale gas in Ohio is going to have on the price of natural gas and what effect that may have on the manufacturing or other industries. Four important considerations that we found instructive in helping us do this analysis that I'll just go through briefly. First one is what Ned referred to with regard to the nature of the hydrocarbons. The Utica appears to be, and we don't have a lot of production data yet to confirm this, but it appears to be rich in natural gas liquids and in oil. And this, of course, makes it very different from natural gas because, as you know, natural gas is selling at a depressed price right now. And our belief is this will lead to an acceleration of drilling and production in Ohio because of the fact that there is oil and natural gas liquids which sell for a considerably higher amount than does the natural gas. A second matter we looked at was that the leases to date have been primarily obtained by major oil and gas companies which have the wherewithal to drill these very expensive wells. And we think this will also lead to an acceleration of drilling and production in Ohio. A third factor we looked at was that the proximity of a skilled workforce in the neighboring states, in particular West Virginia and Pennsylvania. We think this will also have an effect on accelerating the oil and gas drilling and production in Ohio. But we also think this is going to have a negative effect on the number of Ohioans who are employed. We don't model people coming in from out of state. We did not include that in our model in terms of what that contributes to the Ohio economy. But we did take this into account in ratcheting back what we expect in the way of service company employment in Ohio. And finally, another factor we looked at was the current state of post-production infrastructure in Ohio. It's not nearly enough to handle the type of hydrocarbon output that we're going to be expecting to see from these thousands of wells that are going to be drilled in the next several years. And it's a possibility that that lack of infrastructure will also slow down the speed at which this is developed. So we took that into account also in making our drilling projections. Now Bob's not here. I was hoping that Bob Chase would be able to talk to you about what those projections were. And unfortunately I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head. But I could tell you that the projections for drilling that we came up with as a team, and this is working with Bob and also with Larry Wickstrom, who was with the State Geological Survey, we projected numbers on order of about 150 or 160 wells in 2012, going up to over 1,000 wells by 2014. And then the production numbers I don't have off the top of my head right now, but we can get those for you. And the production numbers themselves were derived from an average of a high and a low scenario that Bob Chase did through his analysis of reservoir engineers and looking at other shale productions, especially in areas that had oil production like the Eagle Ford in Texas and the Bakken in North Dakota, and also from his interviews with industry. So we're pretty confident that those numbers are right about in the middle of and fairly conservative. So with that,